in this video I want to show you how to do some drawing, and unfortunately my first go around with doing the starting didn't quite work, but so it's a little too late to restart. So the first thing that I want you to do is find your center, and that's what these diagonal lines are all about. You're going to notice that those lines don't go all the way to the corners. All I did after taping that paper down was to go from diagonally from corner to corner and draw where I thought those would intersect. Once I find that center, I drew a horizontal line over. You're going to make sure, just like we do in class, that your T-square is always up against that table. And then we also want to, whenever we're making vertical lines, make sure that our triangle is up against our T-square. Okay? And that's going to make sure that you have nice vertical lines and parallel lines. Right here, I went every 1/4 of an inch, and so I will write that right here, every 1/4 inch. This one right here will be harder to write. I'll write it down here, and I'm going to every 1/8 inch. Okay, and so this one's every 1/8 of an inch. So today we're really trying to measure and mark to the nearest 1/8 of an inch. Part of this is practice with the drawing tools. Part of it is to get an eye for precision. Part of it is to really kind of get used to what is the size of an 1/8 of an inch. At this point, you know, if you're working in the shop long enough, you will be able to eventually learn and say, okay, this is about an inch, this is about an 1/8 of an inch, and measure and kind of just eyeball things to say, okay, this is about how big it is. I remember once years ago somebody asked me, how big is that bolt up there, and knowing kind of the general sizes, so they kind of go within the nearest 1/8. And I said, oh, that's about a 1/4 of an inch, and I was able to look up, you know, from 5, 8, 10 feet away and see and say, okay, that is about the 3/4 inch bolt, and they bought one and it fit. And so by getting that experience, being able to say, okay, this is about an 1/8 of an inch, this is about a 1/4 of an inch, that it will hopefully allow you to, you know, feel more confident in your measuring, instead of it being a process where you must think all the time. We're going to have a process where you don't have to quite think as much. You can just, you know, look and see it and know a little bit quicker. Okay, we've got a 45, 45, 90 triangle. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw some lines. This is for the second purpose of these drawing activities, which is to get used to our drawing tools. And so what I'm going to do is every one of these 1/4 of an inch, I'm going to draw a 45-degree angle until we get to here. And so I'm going to draw my 45s starting at that line and going here. And so I'm going to draw it every 1/4 of an inch. Now with the way triangles work, this is actually going to be less than a 1/4 of an inch. But if you were to measure here and here, that actually should be pretty close. Again, my T-square is nice and tight up against my table. My triangle is nice and tight up against my T-square. And so I am able to draw very precisely and neatly from here. Okay, I've got it every 1/4 of an inch, and you can see this turns into a lot of sliding my T-square around. Okay. Okay, and so now we have a bunch of diagonal lines. I'm going to end it right there. That's going to be close enough for me to show that you're able to create those diagonals, that you're able to make them nice and parallel. These are nice and parallel as well. These are nice and parallel. I can see that you can measure every 1/4 of an inch and every 1/8 of an inch. The last thing that I want you to do, we're going to do a little bit of counting, and we're going to draw a little bit of a ruler. Okay, and so from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some very, very light construction lines to represent my 1/16ths, my 1/8ths, my 1/4ths, my halves, and then my full inches right here. Okay. From there, I'm going to find the center of this area, and we're going to do a little bit more measuring. Now, the nice thing about this being a smaller area is I can use my triangle instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the center using that same trick where it's diagonal, and I'm going to make sure I'm lined up with the correct line right there. Okay. So there's the center of this, and I'm going to actually use my ruler. I'm going to try to make this easier. There's a way to basically find the center of the center of the center of the center of the center, and that gets really actually quite confusing. And so I'm going to take a look here, and that's going to be about perfect. I've got 4 inches, and so what I'm going to do is draw a line from the center to this line right here. Okay, and that's just going to be a guideline for me. Alright, so I've got this. It's really telling me where the center of this line is. That's at my original horizontal line. I will use that eventually as well. So that's going to be our middle, and we're going to go from 0 to 4 inches, and we're going to divide it into halves, and then into 1/4ths, so that's going to be each inch. Then we're going to divide it into 1/8ths, and that's going to be every 1/2 inch from there. And then we're going to divide it into every, after 1/8 16ths, so we're actually going to measure every 1/4 of an inch between 0 on this side and 4 inches on this side. You don't have to write that on yours, but we're going to have 2 in the middle, 0 on this side, 4 on this side. Okay, that is just a reminder for you to know how far we go. Okay, now with our rulers, you're going to notice, and the reason we're drawing this is if we look at this, we'll see if it'll actually focus for me, but our inches actually have marks that are different lengths, and those different lengths tell us if it's a 1/4, an 1/8, a 1/2, a 16th, whatever it is. And it goes like this. We have our long lines, maybe 0 inches, and then we have the other long line, which is 1 inch. And it might be that this is 10 inches and that's 11 inches or something like that. It repeats between each one. Then we have another line, and you notice I'm pushing down more, so we're using those object lines. Right in the middle, we have one that doesn't go quite as far out. It goes in just a little bit, and that's our 1/2. And I'm going to draw 1/2 right there. Okay, and it's kind of like my analogy is that it's a cake. We divide our cake into 2 equal slices. But if we wanted to have a smaller slice, maybe we're sharing with more people, we would divide that by 1/4ths. And so I'm going to go to that next line down, and I'm going to go to my 1/4ths. And so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 1/4ths. And so this is 1 out of 4, and this is 2 out of 4, but we always reduce, so I won't write that down. And then this is actually 3 out of those 4 slices, and that would be 4 out of 4 being the full cake. Okay. After we divide it into there, if we want to, more friends came over and we need to make sure we have enough for everybody. We're going to divide that into each one of those slices in half, and those are going to be our eighths. Okay, and so we have 0/8, that's 1/8. This is 2/8, and then this is 3/8. This is 4/8. This is 5/8. This is 6/8. That's 7/8, and then 8/8, or 8. Think of it as 8 slices if you'd like. 8 out of those 8 slices. Now we get all of our friends over, but now we got a couple cousins. Our younger siblings decided to bring their friends. I don't know, the analogy's falling apart a little bit, but we're going to divide this into 16 slices now. And so we have 1 out of 16 slices. And then there's 2 out of 16 slices. And there's 3 out of 16 slices. 4, and there's 5 out of 16. There's 6, there's 7 out of 16. There's 8, there's 9 sixteenths, 10, 11 sixteenths, 12 sixteenths, 13 sixteenths, 14 sixteenths, 15 sixteenths, and then of course 16 sixteenths. We always reduce, and so you notice that even though I was counting and saying that's 2 sixteenths and that's 4 sixteenths, we always put the reduced number. So we always say it's a fourth, even if we're going to the nearest 16th. It's a half. It might be that a full inch is the nearest 16th. But you're going to notice that our lines, you can see on my ruler here, shows where the half is fairly long, the quarters are less long, the eighths are less long, and then the sixteenths are just a little bit shorter than that. So I basically drew a larger version